You should assume the situation to be extremely hostile. Beware, we do not know how far the taint of the arch-enemy spreads.
Not gonna lie, I may not know much other than a thing or two about the Warhammer 40k expanding into the Infinity universe, but Warhammer 40k Boltgun is a game that I can firmly say can be enjoyed by both fans and newcomers to the source material alike. Released in 2023, giving an opportunity for those players tired of Warhammer 40k Dark Tide and providing something for them to do while awaiting for the bombastic hit a year later Space Marine 2 to arrive, I believe Boltgun was served as an appetizer for the latter. This game is from the type of games I'd like to call stress killers. Perfect for a hard day at the office or school and you just want to blow off some steam. Some people accomplish this by playing relaxing games, let's say Euro Truck Simulator. Others just want to smash and kill things virtually. Boltgun is the latter category and fills in the position perfectly. Classified as the now well-known term boomer shooter, taking inspiration from graphics and gameplay-wise from the first-person shooter genre of the 90s, such as Duke Nukem 3D and Doom. To me, it mostly reminded me of not just Doom, but more like Brutal Doom or Project Brutality in fact. So in other words, for me, Boltgun is Brutal Doom with a Warhammer 40k skin. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It comes and leaves the stage in the perfect timing before things start to become stale. I personally enjoyed it very much, and I believe full-heartedly, so will you. Reportedly, the story of Boltgun happens sometime between the Space Marine 1 and the Space Marine 2 games made by the same developers. You are put into the shoes of one Malum Cato, a firstborn Sternguard veteran of the Ultramarines' first company, sent in with his squad to the Forge world of Graia by the Inquisition to retrieve an STC artifact dating from the Dark Age of technology. What happens in reality is the whole factory planet has been overrun by Chaos Marines and demons, led by the vicious sorcerer Samael. Upon arriving on the planet, you turn out to be sole survivor from your squad, and you are tasked to reach the artifact, exterminating any forces you come across from whatever species they might belong to. On your journey, you're accompanied by a servo skull by the name of Inoculus, providing you with an insight into the current situation and also serving as a navigational tool so you don't get lost in the levels. The whole story spans originally in 3 chapters with 8 stages each. There is a DLC as well called Forges of Corruption, which adds one more campaign chapter with an additional 5 stages, along with introducing a couple of new enemy types and new guns for you to use. In my honest opinion, the story is more or less presented here just so you don't go aimlessly killing anything that moves. It gives you just enough for you to have a purpose. It doesn't give you much of an insight into the world of Warhammer 40k, it doesn't explain who the Inquisition is, or who the Ultramarines are, what are the Chaos Agents, or the Demons, etc. It is presented in a way that, if you know, you know. If you don't, well, tough. If you want lore exposition, you're playing the wrong game. On the other hand, I can tell the game doesn't aim to overwhelm you in terms of information or technology. As much as the game may initially look as if it's made only for fans of the universe, it does try to kind of tiptoe around the newcomers and people like me, who have limited knowledge, so it provides just enough so it doesn't alienate. In terms of story on the pure merit, as I always try to keep my game reviews, the story is not really much to write home about. Both in quantity or quality, the story is presented mainly through cutscenes in the beginning of each chapter. It's just enough to work and keep things together in a coherent way. Story, 6 out of 10. Boltgun is simple in nature, again taking cue from the way first-person shooter games were made in the 90s. There is no instance of you having to put more than 2 brain cells together in order to advance, other than just shoot your way through the stages. There is no alternative paths, the stages are pretty linear. You start with weapon in hand and very much exterminate anything that moves. Follow the path until you come to a locked door. Find the specific color key that opens the doors. Sometimes there are multiple doors, therefore multiple color keys. Dispatch the next wave of enemies, rinse and repeat. Once in a while you will have something the game calls Purge. I would call it Endurance Round, where the game will try to overwhelm you with enemies. You need to survive and kill them all until the purge is completed. Other times that purge in question, along with the multitude of enemies, will also include an actual boss you have to kill. You continue until you come to the exit, where you get a brief view of your stats during that level and how well did you do. Now, rinse and repeat that same thing 24 more times, plus another 5 if we count the DLC too. This does present the possibility the game to become stale after the 5th or 6th stage in a row. If I would recommend anything related to playing this game, one of those things would be to not take it all in one sitting. Based on the lore, Space Marines are able to self-heal almost instantly compared to a normal mortal human. But here, there's none of that hide in the corner and regenerate health. The game goes old school in that matter. Your Marine has a total of 200 health and 200 contempt, or armor, if you like. And with some small pickups, you can extend both the health and the contempt to their absolute max level of 250. Space Marines being this absolute killing machine without armor, you will find out very quickly just how very squishy you really are. Despite the initial impression the game gives you on the first couple of stages in the first chapter. The game is littered with health and contempt pickups up and down and diagonally. Levels take anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes to complete, sometimes up to 30 if you happen to take your sweet time during the boss battles. Or, for some reason, you decide to ignore Inoculus's navigation system to trust your own inner compass to orientate where you need to go next, only to find out you run around like a headless chicken with no clue where to go. There is a system implemented which, in all fairness, the game didn't introduce officially, therefore I failed to see it until I was already at least the whole first chapter in. Your weapons have a different strength rating, and so does the enemy you encounter. Simply put, if your weapon strength is higher than the enemy's, more damage you deal. If it's the same, then you deal normal damage. If your weapon is with a lesser strength level than the enemy, then that means, of course, less damage is being dealt. It's a system that encourages you to constantly swap weapons based on the enemy you face. I guess this was introduced in order to incorporate some form of strategy, although personally for me it felt kind of forced upon me. Like every normal person, you will have a set of favorite weapons, and a set of such that you don't want to touch ever. And the game will try to act as if you want to survive this, you gotta get out of your comfort weapon zone. By that extent, a quick comment I will make about the shotgun, a staple in the first-person shooter genre, being normally a powerful weapon, especially up close. Here, the shotgun is disappointingly the least intimidating weapon, and one with the lowest strength rating. Best application will be to dispatch lower level enemies in bulk, such as those annoying little goblins and blue demons. Other than those, there's really no point in ever using the shotgun, regardless of you seeing me in the footage using it often. The enemies you're going to meet, cultists and traitors, which, as much as you sneeze in their general direction, are dead. Demon spawns, such as these annoying little fucks, goblins and toads, including baby blue demons, which always looked very cartoonish to me, and the Chaos Marines of the shooting and grenade toss type, the charging champion, I hate him, the machine gun bullet sponge type, and a couple more. The bosses you will encounter every now and then consists of normally Chaos God Nurgle, the Great Unclean One, Tzeentch, Lord of Change, and at the end of the chapter you always face the main antagonist, the Chaos Sorcerer Samael. Other than using the system of my weapon is higher rating than you, there is no other type of strategy to be used against any of the enemies, bosses included. Keep shooting until there is nothing more than a pile of bones and tomato sauce around you. One part of the arsenal is your trusted chainsword, which you can use to cut down and butcher your enemies. If you want to completely dismember your enemy, all you have to do is just keep tapping the melee button until it is dead. Not the most applicable strategy in most instances, but it does a great job if you want to dispatch usually easy to kill enemies just to conserve ammunition. One cool perk about it is by holding the melee button, it highlights the closest enemy in your view in a way of a slow motion and performs something like a quick dash. Regardless if the enemy is in front or above you, you just magically dash in his direction. If the enemy was shooting at you at the time, you will basically bypass the shots, making them completely miss you and having to tell you on a ear whisper level how sharp is your chainsword exactly. Another ability you have is the charge attack. It has a cooldown of about 2 to 3 seconds, but it does a great job at dispersing smaller and easy to kill enemies by charging forward, knocking any enemy in your path. Perfect for when dealing with 20 or so goblins on your tail, as this charge serves as a glorious mow down, knocking back tougher enemies and smashing to pieces any smaller ones. As you've probably already noticed by now, at the end screen of the stages you have the well-known secrets counter. These secrets themselves are not really much of a hidden area with bonus items in it, but more of a power-ups that could be found within that level. You can clear a whole stage without even bothering to find any of those power-ups. It's just going to take a little more time to deal with all the enemies and will mean spending more ammunition. So there's really not much pressure for you to make sure you conclude the stage finding all the secrets for that level, except if you're an absolute completionist. Most probably, without me even checking, there's pretty much, I'm sure there's an achievement for concluding all stages on all chapters, finding all the secrets, but frankly, I've never been much of a 100% achiever gamer, so I couldn't care less. Anything gained from those power-ups, especially the passive ones, work only until the end of the current stage, therefore doesn't carry over into the next stage. Power-ups range between passive buffs such as Machine Spirits, which upgrades your currently equipped weapon by 1 on the strength scale, Munitions Boon, which extends your maximum ammo reserves, and you also have the one called Emperor's Visage, increasing your contempt to 300. When you've got your time buffs, usually last for around 30 seconds, you got the Assault Doctrine, drastically increases your chainsword damage, you got the Aura of Doom, think quad damage for those of you old enough to remember, drastically increased damage for your weapons, and treating your enemy attacks as mosquito bites pretty much. Infinite ammo for every weapon, so you know you don't need to reload. Best way to implement any of those bonuses is if you happen to find it during your boss battle, or you're literally swarmed by enemies from every direction to give you some breathing room. Other power-ups include a couple of types of ammo for your boltgun, which lasts only for 1 magazine, so you better use them only when you really need them, as there will be no more found on the level afterwards. Those are the Kraken rounds, higher rate of fire, ignoring armor. Dragonfire rounds, just like the name suggests, it applies explosive burning damage to your enemies. And you got the Vengeance rounds, which give you extra damage on armored targets, such as the Chaos Marines. And one important item left from the power-ups and secrets, it's the Vortex Grenade, which creates a warp-powered vortex, pulling in and annihilating anything in its vicinity, perfect for cheesing your encounter with bosses in game. One thing that I found bizarre and weird, and not gonna lie, a little annoying, at the beginning of a new chapter, all of your collected weapons are taken away. And at best, you start with your first weapon, the Boltgun. The game takes away my toys, so now I have to grind again to get my weapons back. I really don't understand who thought this was a good idea and why. If you happen to know, Leave it in the comments. Another thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, there's almost no visual or audio feedback for when you get hit, and you will get hit. So if you're not paying attention to your health, you won't even realize that you are literally at a spit of health left when you could almost swear 10 seconds ago you were at full health and contempt. One last thing, the horde mode, or basically survival mode. Thrown into a huge map area, you fight enemies one wave at a time, starting first with your chainsword, and with each and every level and wave passed, you get a new weapon or a new area map will open via the color keys. Survive as long as possible. I tried it, I even upped my difficulty to veteran, and my best so far is 6 waves. The game can be completed in about 7 hours, with the DLC and extra chapter extending that to about maybe 8 or 9 hours. The horde mode can potentially further extend the playtime, but not by a large margin. On the pure merit, the killing and the weapons feels great. It has a good variety of enemies. Along with the aforementioned strength rating system, it provides a possibility for more strategic gameplay. The only drawbacks in total are the lack of proper visual and audio feedback from being hit, the at one point stages becoming repetitive, the bizarre choice of stripping you from your weapons at the beginning of every new chapter, and the boss battles being a little bit of a mixed bag. Rehashing the same bosses over and over again with no other strategy of taking them down other than to just shoot everything you got until their life bars with the size of a bus trip to Mars is down to 0. If I ignore the drawbacks, the game has a lot to offer. As I mentioned before, it's a perfect candidate for a stress relief after a long and stressful day at work or school. Gameplay? 7 out of 10. Warhammer 40K Boltgun is a boomer shooter, and a beautiful one at that. A lot of effort has been put in it, and it shows. Unreal Engine 4 has been used to blend the modern technical capabilities and the retro aesthetic, capturing perfectly, in my opinion, the sense and the feel of a game from that period. You can even cater further to the feel by the developers, providing you, similar to Project Warlock, for example, the sliders to further adjust the retro aesthetic of the game, all the way down to virtually a pixelated mess, which you would achieve if you tried to play the original Doom, its native, very low resolution. The sound is superb, the weapon sounds are punchy, it's really satisfying to hear your enemies crunch to a pile of bones and blood, further feeding the feel of a Space Marine as an unstoppable killing machine. You produce this metal clang with your every step, and every time you land is like a Voltron is in the house. As far as I could tell, every stage has its own music track that fits to the tone of the carnage and is only in play when you have the actual encounters. Once everyone and everything in the path is dead, the game turns off the music essentially, leaving you in like unnerving silence alone with your thoughts and of course the metal clangs of your steps. There are times where I stopped in my tracks to really appreciate the beauty of the game and the scope of some areas of the chapters. Not gonna lie, there are occasions where areas like corridors, catwalks look way too similar, almost point blank copy paste. Regardless, the developers have done a great job, providing you with as much variety as possible. You've got the desert side of the planet, you've got the snow-capped part, you've got the Forge Mechanicum factory. Nothing really to complain about, otherwise it will be for me just a next level nitpicking just for the purpose of having something to complain about. This game doesn't deserve complaints on such a surface level. Presentation, 8 out of 10. In terms of final thoughts, let me put it this way. If you're the type of person who likes boomer shooters, likes Warhammer 40k universe, and also being the kind of just let me go kill stuff and don't bother me with puzzles. If you recognized yourself in that description, well, I dare to say this game is for you. Final score from me, 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.